Hello, everyone. So the Fed finally made up its mind. The Fed made up its mind and it decided to lower the rates by 50 basis points. That's great. Everybody was hoping for 25. We thought that, remember, 50 it means that they think the recession is happening. So it's not what's happening. No. What's the hook here? The hook is that we had one Dissent. So the first thing is 50 bips. I don't see anybody running for the exits because of the fact that they fear for recession. That didn't happen. So, but there was a Dissent. One of the 11 members, the voting members, basically, Michelle Bowman said that she wanted 25, not 50. 50 is too much. There's no reason for it. We have this thing under control. Is she thinking that? Probably is. The question that I want to ask now, the reason it's important is because this is the first time since 2005 that there has been Dissent. He was asked during the Q&A, kind of waved it off like it wasn't a big deal. I don't know. We need to look into it. We need to understand what's going on there. Why? Because if the Fed is not independent, possibility, I will show you in a few minutes later on in this video what happened in the past with Arthur Burns and Nixon. And we'll see what happened at that time. And you're going to realize that sometimes the Fed is not as independent as we want. And there was a lot of pressure on the Fed this time around. Why is there pressure on the Fed? There is pressure on the Fed because there's an election. I will pick up a video that I heard not too long ago, and I will show you. I've been talking about this for a while now, and this is coming to fruition. I am concerned. I am concerned that the Fed might not be independent. What does that mean? Well, I mean, obviously, he's lowering the rates. It's great because you obviously have you'll have lower interest rate on your mortgage. Everything's going to get cheaper. Maybe it makes sense for us to invest in small company stocks. That is great. The difference is, what if they're not independent? Which means they're not acting in your best interest. They're acting in the interest of this administration or the future administration, probably the current administration. Is there something going on that we need to understand? Because if they're not clean, if there's some issues going on with the Fed that we're not aware of, then maybe instead of keeping it at 25, they're going to bring it to 50. They're going to lower it. Obviously, it's wonderful for the current administration. Plus, if there's a recession, it puts the recession away. But at the same time, we could take the risk of creating inflation again. Hey, don't forget, we haven't beaten the inflation. It's on the way down, but the last number was kind of flat. So, and let's remember that in the 80s, they did the same thing, and they lowered it, and they think it was enough. And guess what? They start to lower the rates, and they had double inflation. They had stagflation. Why? Because they went into a recession with high interest rate. So let's be careful. So let's cue up the first video, which I think is quite interesting. And let's see what these people have to say.
The Wall Street Journal's Nick Timiraos writing this. The central banks usually prefers to move in increments of a quarter point, but this time is complicated as the goal is to preserve solid job market now that price pressures have cooled. Nick Timiraos joins me right now, the Wall Street Journal's chief economics correspondent and the author of $1 Trillion Triage. Nick, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And you've made the case in the...
Now, this guy wrote a book. So he's not selling anything. He's not an advisor. He's coming in and he's just selling his book, which is okay because at the end of the day, he has no dog in this hunt, basically, right? He's going to basically tell you what he thinks because as long as you saw his book and you buy his book, that's all he cares about. He's not out there peddling an idea, peddling a stock.
Journal, as well as in your tweet yesterday, that you could make the case for both sides. Break down for us cutting 25 basis points versus 50 basis points.
Well, thanks for having me, Maria. The case for 25 is that, the economy is fundamentally fine. You don't see anything terribly alarming right now. And changing direction on interest rates is a big move. So start smaller, and then if you think you need to do more later, you can do more later. The case for 50 comes down to what Fed officials call risk management. with interest rates now at a level that almost everybody thinks is restrictive. You are above the neutral rate. And with the economy pretty much in a place where you want it to stay, you want to be closer to neutral. So risk management says you ought to move closer to neutral sooner. Former Dallas Fed President Rob Kaplan told me, he told Cheryl last week, that he thinks about it in terms of minimizing regret. What are you more likely to regret? Cutting by 50 and the economy's fine, and at your next meeting in November, you say, well, that, interest rates are not too low at 4.9%. Or if you cut by 25 and then things cool down a lot more and you say, oh, geez, we're behind the curve. And so I think the case for 50 is really one of what are you going to regret more?
Yeah, but I mean, if you...
Right? So basically, if you do 25, at the end of the day, if you have a recession coming up and you did 25, you're going to be in trouble because you said, why only 25? Now you got to do another 50. Nice total panic. If you do 50 now, hopefully people don't think there is a recession, and which is what happened. People didn't panic, didn't think recession. Then it's great. Again, Powell did a good job here.
A 50 basis point cut in September, just less than 50 days away from an election. Does the Fed get criticized for trying to help one side, Kamala Harris's side, by cutting rates aggressively?
Here we go. Here we go. There's the argument, obviously, that maybe you're doing 50 because you want to help the next president in the Democratic, Kamala Harris. Right? Because now she's obviously going to have lower rates. It's going to favor housing. It's going to probably make the stock market go up. Right? Now, of course, you could have said, well, 50 bips, and now you're telling this recession. You're not really helping her. It's helping her because obviously the market is not panicking because we did 50 bips. Here comes the doozy.
I think the Fed is going to get criticized no matter what it does. And so the focus is on getting it right. If the economy is slowing a lot and let's say Donald Trump wins the election and then the Fed has to cut interest rates a lot, that could end up looking political in hindsight too. Well, they waited until after the election. They didn't do what they should have done. And at the town hall last night in Flint, Donald Trump said, the fact that the economy might not be so good, the Fed is cutting because the economy might not be so good.
Right, that's
true. So I think, you can play this anyway on...
Right. So Trump is not stupid, right? He's basically saying that, although it didn't work, right? Because I guess if they had done 50 and then the market thought, oh my God, there is going to be a recession. That's why they're cutting 50 because we're expecting 25. Then you would have a huge drop in the stock market and he would have said, you see, we have a recession. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was a good play. It was a good move. It didn't happen, unfortunately. The market kind of looked at it. The market went up, went down, and I think it ended up more or less, it ended up a little higher. I mean, I was able to get out of my play, my option play, made about 1,400% annualized. Again, take a look at my Patreon if you want to know what's going on in terms of my trades. Don't forget you want to subscribe to my channel because I'm here to educate. This is education here. I'm educating you as to what's really going on so you understand exactly what the players are doing. And this is an interesting player. This is an interesting take. You need to understand because right now, if we believe that he lowered the rates to help Kamala, well, I don't know. There was a dissent. I mean, not a huge amount. I mean, not 50%. Just one of the, Michelle Bowen basically said we should have stick to 25. Let's see what happens next.
Politics.
What about these 3 Senate Democrats, including Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren? She sent a letter to Jay Powell, and she's demanding they cut rates by 75 basis points. She says waiting this long to cut rates has threatened the economy and left the Fed behind the curve. House Financial Services Chairman Patrick McHenry blasted those lawmakers. He said that they're demeaning their role by trying to influence the Fed and that the central bank should act in the way that the data indicates. Nick, do you have a sense of whether or not the Fed has missed their opportunity and is in fact behind the curve?
Okay, so this is not make-believe, right? The senator, the Democratic senator, literally said, you should cut 25 basis. I am telling you what to do. Now, Powell, as he hears, right? He listens. I mean, you could imagine the message that is being sent. I don't know. Is he listening to that message? Because don't forget, there's a right way of doing things and there is a wrong way. We'll look at it the wrong way later on. But if the right way of doing things was maybe to leave it at 25 and slow yourself in, because don't forget, if you lower the rates too fast, you might ignite inflation again when you don't really have to, since you don't have a recession. This is important, because if you ignite inflation again and we're back in the situation, and don't forget, we may have a recession coming up. I mean, lots of people are saying it. Let's see what happens next.
The way Elizabeth Warren charges?
Well, the comments from McHenry, that was from an interview that I did with him yesterday, and he basically said the Fed should do what it has to do, period. And I think that's what the Fed is going to do here. I think the reason this is a close call today is because, there was a debate at the last meeting in July about whether they should cut. They obviously decided not to cut interest rates then. And then 2 days after that meeting, you got a job report that was much softer than what almost anybody had been looking for.
Right? There's been discussion internally at the Fed. Discussion, hopefully geared only solely toward their jobs, not toward the politics of it. Keep in mind that in the past, when Yellen was still the Treasury, was still at the Fed, she raised rates right when Donald Trump went into office. And guess what? When he lost and Biden came in, she was giving a nice job, Treasury Secretary. I'm just saying.
Think if they had had that number in front of them at that meeting, they probably would have cut interest rates. You don't get mulligans in central banking. But so there's an argument there that says, well, you would have been 25 basis points lower in July if you had known what was coming, and you'd probably be 25 basis points lower today, even if you had moved then. I think that's another argument for being, 50 basis points lower today.
Tom Lee from Fundstrat has been making the case that this is all noise, that the Fed put is in, the Fed put is back, and that's where things are going. And so any reaction after the number right away is going to be just noise. Give us your...
It is noise. At the end of the day, what are we really doing, right? We were just trying to guesstimate what's going on with the Fed. But don't underestimate. I have a video, and I'll post it, where you could see Powell talking, and you could see what the SPY is doing as he's talking. And this is where I took the opportunity to unwind. As soon as it started talking about the unemployment and housing and blah 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 and the Dissent, it started to drop. So you need to understand what's going on. Don't try to predict what's going to happen. Try to understand. And right now there's a lot of volatility. Right now, understand, is the Fed independent? 100%, 50%, 25%? Because that will make a difference.
What you want to listen for, what's most important that we should be focused in on when Jay Powell speaks today at 2:30 in that press conference?
Well, the quarterly interest rate projections at this meeting will be interesting because this is calendar-based guidance they provide. They're writing down how many rate cuts they expect over the course of the year. But after today, there's only 2 more meetings, Maria. So they're pretty much telling you what they think is likely to happen in November and December. And so if they cut 25 and they put down 25 more in November and December, that'll be a signal. If they do 50, do they still see 25 more in November and December? That'll be...
So basically, they have 2 more meetings. So we're going to see more rate cuts. But this is going to be extremely volatile month, end of quarter. Why? It's going to be volatile because the possibility is there that the numbers that are going to tell us we have a recession are going to creep up. Now, of course, if in their mind they want to lower the rates in order to fight the recession, that's going to be bad for Kamala and good for Trump. Maybe they don't fight as hard then in that case. But right now, they got the decade they needed because there's nothing the soft landing is in the mind, but I don't know. Maybe we come up some negative numbers coming up. In that case, if they're thinking of helping Kamala, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to have to cut like mad. But if they do cut like mad, they're going to give the impression that, you know what, there is recession coming up. But that's okay, because now we'll see the numbers already. This is very volatile situation still.
The first thing that people look at 2 p.m., Tom's right. At the end of the day, people are not going to remember this meeting if the economy, slides off the cliff here, or if Jay Powell sticks the soft landing. And so I think, in the long run, it's really about can you succeed in your goal here of bringing inflation down without a recession?
So is that your barometer, inflation and where it is? Because there's also this jobs number that, is also debatable. I mean, look, you had the July and August jobs report showing a labor market.
Now, let's remember who we were talking to here, right? Look at the channel. This is a Trump channel. So obviously they're not going to let him get away by saying, hey, this is all good and, the economy is doing well. And that's what I mean by you need to understand who the players are.
That is slowing. If it continues to weaken, how would you look at the economy today?
Well, I think the puzzle right now is the hiring rate is very low. The hiring rate is close to it's close to where it was 10 years ago. Hiring has slowed down a lot, but the unemployment rate has not gone up, quite so much because layoffs are still low. So you see these announcements now from companies like Amazon telling workers to come back into the office 5 days a week. And I think you have to wonder, is that sort of the first step towards letting people go? This is a non-wage benefit. The company.
Yeah, well, we know what's happening right now. In fact, Bloomberg announced the same thing. In the past, the workers used to say, listen, this is a strong economy. I am staying home. I want to go 5 days. I want to go 3 days a week out of the office. People say, okay, you know what? We want to keep you. You could stay. But now things are changing. Amazon is doing it. Bloomberg is saying you are coming back into the office now. Because quite frankly, you're going to need us more than we need you. So that might be a sign of things to come, i.e. more unemployment.
Are taking away, and it could be a sign that says, look, we think we overhired, we think we're overstaffed, we don't want to fire people, but we want you to come back into the office because we don't really care if some people leave the company right now. I think that's a question is, what is happening to labor demand? A body in motion stays in motion. The labor market has been cooling, and so what is going to stop the labor market from cooling?
Yeah, that's a great point. Nick, if this is the
When it says the market is cooling, the economy is cooling. That is a fact. But is it getting all frozen? That's a different question.
of a string of rate cuts, how long would you expect that to last? I mean, let's say, the betting on Wall Street that we get 3 cuts this year. How many cuts next year? What are you expecting how long this string of rate cuts or this next cycle would last?
Well, I think it really does depend on what happens in the economy with employment and inflation in particular. If you were to see another upside surprise to inflation, or if there's evidence that the neutral interest rate is higher, what is a normal interest rate in this economy? Is it 3%? Is it 4%? That's going to play a big role in where the Fed goes. If inflation picks back up, then the Fed might have to slow off these cuts. On the other hand, if inflation continues to make the progress that it has been making towards the Fed's 2% goal, and if hiring continues to slow, and if layoffs pick up, then the Fed will cut more. And so I think it just comes down to what happens in the economy. We will have to watch.
Yeah, that's...
Well, the problem is, if you want to make money in the stock market, you can't watch. You got to do before. Like I did with my trade. I put a trade on the 13th, where basically looking at a put, the December 31st call on the SPY, and I got in at 16, got out at 18, right? Just to pick up that little bump. But you can't wait until the Fed comes out and say, okay, now I'm going to put the trade on. Well, it's already at 18. You know what I mean? So you need to make money in the stock market. You need to know ahead of time, not so much what is going to happen, but what the mood is. And if you understand the mood, it's very volatile, then you could benefit from it. The other thing that you need to understand right now is what is really going on with the Fed. How are they thinking? You need to get into their mind. obviously something is going on, because Michelle Bowman, she said, you know what, 25 was just enough. And we're thinking maybe this guy is, wants to help Kamala. Who knows?